Mark, can you hear me okay?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Yay.
Excellent. Okay, now what we have to do is wait for Susan. So how have you been doing?
Okay, this is my first time speaking at one of these, and I got some very confusing directions from Grok.
Oh dear.
It said that you can't be a speaker on Xspace if you're using your Windows computer. You
That's
have
weird.
to use iOS or Android.
Yeah, I know.
So
It's really weird. I mean, you can use your Mac laptop, you can use your iPhone, but you can't use an iPad.
But in this
And,
case, Grok was wrong. I can't. That's why I came in very early, because I was afraid this wasn't going to work, and I was just going to have to go to Plan B. But here we are. I'm using Windows, and I'm in.
oh god. I don't know if you probably haven't listened to any past ones. We just put together and released an archive of these. But John Rothman couldn't get hide nor hair of how to deal with spaces. So I ended up talking with him. I ended up connected to him on the phone, and then I had to put the phone next to the microphone for my laptop to get him on Spaces.
Oh wow!
That was hilarious.
Just to adjust your thinking, I did listen to the one on August 17th.
Oh, good.
Yes. Good. So I know what to expect.
Yeah, I think overall, we have this, and we also have our podcast with John Rothman, and I think what I want to try and do in the future is sort of consolidate the two, or either that or have another podcast, simply because this it is this particular venue is a bit janky, but we do get probably about, I don't know, 50 to 100 people listening or chiming in, so every now and then it works out really well.
I guess this is going to be a tough weekend since it's Labor Day.
I wouldn't be surprised by that. I suspect you'd be surprised. I mean, some of the people that have shown up to listen to this, like Steve Hilton showed up to listen.
Wow.
Let's see. David Crane, who's a former policy aide to Schwarzenegger, showed up to listen. So it's interesting who occasionally shows up to listen. But yeah, usually we get 50 to 100, depending upon the topic.
I know David Crane, and in fact, I sent him my VOSF commentary on the cable car. He's interested in that topic.
Oh, neat. Yeah, we should talk a little bit. We should talk about that as well, simply because, I mean, I used to find myself taking the cable car a lot myself.
Oh.
Simply because they've got that discount for locals. You can pay if you're a local. If you've got a local fast pass, you can pay regular fare just to get on the cable car instead of the $8.
Okay.
Which
could
probably go, but and people will complain about it. But what are you going to do?
Well, there are some times of the day when it's not very busy, right? So you might as well have pass holders come in there and use up some of the spare capacity.
Exactly. Yeah, I found myself. It's really weird. I've lived in the city for like 30 years, and I'm originally from Palo Alto, and then I moved around a lot as a kid. Then I came back to settle in the Bay Area and decided to live in San Francisco, and I've been here ever since. And I've always lived in North Beach, and I've always had a job somewhere, near City Hall in the Civic Center. And so I found myself taking the cable car a lot. Simply because if you go from Powell Station to, or you go from the terminus of the cable car at Bay and Taylor, which is right next to where I live, it goes to Powell Station, and then you can either just walk or take a bus from Powell Station to the City Hall, and I would be at my job. Wow. So you came from Palo Alto. Well, I was born in Palo Alto, and I lived there probably until, I don't know, 5th grade.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I got moved around a lot as a kid.
Were your folks somehow related to Stanford?
No. Well, my dad worked as a quality assurance engineer at Telesensory Systems.
Okay, so somehow related to Stanford because it probably was founded by somebody who went to Stanford, right?
Exactly. They worked fairly closely with Stanford on some stuff like Dad's project was called the Opticon. It was this basically, it looked like Mr. Spock's tricorder, but it had a wand that you could optically read text in a book, and then you stuck your finger inside the big box, and it had a touchpad with pins that would come up to mirror what the it was essentially a very early optical reader of printed books.
Interesting. Wow.
So, but yeah, I found myself moving around a lot as a kid, and I finally decided I want to come back as an adult, live in San Francisco, and that's been the pattern. North Beach to the Civic Center for whatever reason.
I used to live at near Broadway and Embarcadero.
Oh wow!
In Golden Gateway Commons. Does that mean anything to you? There's a little.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's those 2 big white apartment buildings accompanied by all those townhouses.
No. I don't know what that one's called, but the ones I'm thinking of are north of there. So there's a Greek. God, I can't remember. Kokaris. It's diagonally north and east of Kokaris.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, it was a great place to live. Incredibly high rent.
Yeah, I know. I mean, all of those areas are, the newer construction around there is pretty amazing.
This was built in the 70s, but they did a great job. But I mean, so many. We moved out in 2012 to Walnut Creek, and so many things that I remember are gone. Like I used to like to go to the Embarcadero Center movie theater. They had the independent films there. That's gone. The Indian restaurant across there from there is gone. The Fuzio is gone. I mean, these like all my memories of living in San Francisco are getting erased.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I spent a good part of my childhood in Hawaii, and I remember going back to bury my mom, and it was like a lot of the places I used to hang out when I was a high schooler they were there, but they weren't there because they were closed, but nothing had come to replace them. So you had these places with the same signs, but they were empty.
Oh, yeah. Was this Oahu?
Yeah, and this is feeling kind of the same now here, which is a bit scary.
And the San Francisco Center is ground zero for that, right? There's you walk in there and you can remember going to Nordstrom or going to Bloomingdale's. Now it's all gone.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I remember mostly about that mall is that first there was the Westfield Mall, and then, the one further toward the one part of the mall that is further towards the bay used to be an Emporium. Right. So there was the mall and there was the Emporium, and then it sort of expanded in. I think they tried to make the Emporium into a separate mall, and then they consolidated the two.
Yes,
that's what it seemed like.
Yes, but it does feel like 2 separate things that have been mashed together, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's got I mean, if you look at the food courts, the architecture's the architecture is separate. They got separate entrances for what should be one consolidated food court.
Yes.
And the architectural styles and the finishes inside the 2 main malls are different. So it is in many ways like going into a different place.
I think the thing that most people don't know is that there's also an office portion, and that's where I did.
That's where the Examiner is, among other things.
Oh my God! That's where I did my master's program at San Francisco State.
Oh,
so
wow.
I have very strong memories of going into the entrance at 845 Market and up the elevator. And then for the longer classes, we'd have a break for dinner, and so you could go down to the food court. But a lot of those options are gone now.
Yep. Although Panda Express survives.
Yes.
Apparently, it's like Panda Express will be there forever, apparently. So.
Well, I forget the name of it, but there was sort of a high-end grocery store there.
Mm-hmm.
Something Farms, I think. Maybe one of our listeners will remember that.
I remember it.
Yeah, and that's where we used to get our dinner.
I just got a text from Susan. She's starting a little late. She'll be on a little bit late, but we've got 2 minutes to air as it
okay.
were, but she'll be a little bit late. But yeah, I remember the sort of that. It was like they played out a grocery store inside the mall, inside the atrium of the mall, which seemed kind of weird to me.
Huh.
But
that I don't. I'm thinking about a space that was in the basement across from a lot of the fast food places that were there.
Oh, okay, yeah. I remember it now.
Yeah.
It still seemed kind of odd to me because it just seemed like they had planted it in the middle of the food court.
Great for students.
Yes, I can imagine.
Bring it back to class even.
Exactly. Yeah, I can imagine. How long were you at? So you were at San Francisco. So you were at the downtown campus of San Francisco State to get your master's, or?
Yes, and that program with Master's in Public Administration. Now they're in 160 Spear Street, which is a nice facility, but it's it would be nice if they were still could be at the mall, but it is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
I think they were priced out actually.
I could
many years ago. Yeah, so.
Yeah, I could imagine that. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Golden Gate University is in threat of being priced out as well, and they had their own building basically. Now it looks like they might be able to save themselves by doing selling to a developer, build a much larger building, and then lease back, or something like that.
Interesting. My wife went there.
Yeah. So okay, it is 11 o'clock. We've got some audience people here already. Welcome to the Sunday Brunch Space from the Voice of San Francisco. I am Mike Egge, your editor-in-chief, and I am here with Marc Joffe. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
You are. Thanks.
Okay, good. He is currently president of the Contra Costa County Taxpayers Association and a visiting fellow at the California Policy Center. He's been formerly with the Cato Institute and the Reason Foundation and Moody's. As a former resident of San Francisco, he's been an occasional contributor to The Voice. One of his last more popular articles was a modest proposal to privatize the cable car system in order to save it. However, at the end of April, he also contributed a piece on the quest for finding buyers for San Francisco Center, which we thought we'd talk about today, since it's basically this big hole in the middle of downtown, and it's I think most people take it for granted, but it is a big part of residents' lives. And they just went through if you've been following the news, they just went through another round of trying to hold an auction for it, and that's been canceled again. And some people have come up with some ideas for it with various levels of validity. I mean, we all remember Mayor Breed, when she was still in charge, sort of blithely mentioned the idea of converting it to a soccer stadium. That was interesting. There have been some other quote-unquote interesting ideas out there. My former colleague, Kevin Trung at The Standard, pointed out that if every single resident of San Francisco pitched in a little over $300, everyone in the city could just sort of collectively buy it. But the question is, towards what end? So, Marc, you have some ideas in that regard. What have you been thinking about?
Well, I sort of wanted to bring more of a finance lens to it, Mike. I actually moved to San Francisco originally in 2002 to work for Moody's Analytics. So I know a lot about credit and bonds and debt and that sort of thing. So this really came on my radar screen, not only as someone who's been in and out of San Francisco, but as a finance person, because I study commercial mortgage-backed securities. And I think that the debt structure around San Francisco Center really explains why it's not recovering. And I really want people to understand that. And I also want the city to understand that they're going to have to be a lot more proactive in terms of encouraging a sale to get this into the hands of somebody who's actually going to do something with it. Because the way it's set up now, it is effectively owned by a bunch of institutional bond investors. And most of them have been wiped out. So when we talk about a structured finance vehicle, and those are like those evil things that caused the Great Recession back in 07 and 08, they're structured, meaning that there are different layers. So there are tranches. There's a junior tranche, and then there's a mezzanine tranche, and then there's a senior tranche. Just to oversimplify. Well, at this point, given the current appraisal of something like $73 million for a property that used to be worth well over $1 billion, everyone except the senior note holders have been wiped out. And so they don't really have much of an interest. I mean, they might pretend. I mean, theoretically, they have a piece of paper that's worth 100 cents on the dollar, but it's really not, because no one's going to pay for that. So it's only a few AAA institutional bond investors, and those folks have very large, diverse portfolios. And they also have zero expertise in real estate turnarounds. So the problem right now is you basically have absentee ownership. They delegate to something called a special servicer, which is a company that tries to figure out how to get some money back for them. But they're basically paid on a monthly basis. So even they don't really have a strong incentive to wind this thing up and liquidate it so that it can move on to its best and highest purpose. So getting back to your original question, I'm sort of amused that people who have no skin in the game making all these proposals about what to do with it.
Yeah.
Not only no skin in the game, probably very little. And I'm not going to say I'm any different. No real commercial real estate expertise. And we'll get into some of the crazy ideas that we've been seeing. But I mean, you really need somebody who's an experienced developer or manager of large commercial properties to come in and take it over at a whatever the market price is at this point, and then redevelop it.
Yeah, and isn't that sort of a common problem with other commercial real estate issues? Like a lot of our office buildings are sort of owned the same way by essentially, or not necessarily the exact same way, but by a lot of owners that are just they feel they can just sit on it.
Yep, a lot of these office buildings and the two Hilton hotels, the Hilton Union Square and the Park 55, and several office buildings along California Street are all in vehicles like this. And they have, again, the same kind of thing where there's something that we say in the commercial real estate industry, extend and pretend. You don't write down the value of your investment because you can keep extending the mortgage, and hope that things turn around. Now, but in the case of Westfield walked away from it. And so there's no more extending and pretending there. But in other cases, that's happening.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
So when I think about it from a policy point of view, the main thing that I'm hoping the city will think about is what can it do to encourage a buyer? And I think the main thing is that the city can do is make sure that there are as few land use restrictions as possible. Now, I've looked at the zoning. It doesn't look like it's particularly restrictive, but there is one thing that turned out to be a stumbling block when Westfield took over this mall back in, I think, around 2005. There's a requirement to preserve the dome from the Emporium. And they actually violated that slightly. They didn't, it looks like it's there, but apparently it's not totally there. Where they did something to it that they weren't allowed to do by the architectural restrictions. and so they actually had to pay a fine. But but at this point, it's nice. It's from 1896. It would be wonderful if we could keep it. We can't, and that
I remember
probably
Aaron Peston was very pissed off about that and pushed it. And I think also another controversy back then was that essentially they were arguing that the entire building had been gutted, and that really the only thing that had been left is that the absolute front of the old Emporium, and he was trying to make an issue of that as well.
Yeah, that I think that whole thing with historical preservation can really go too far. I remember, and I don't know if this is still an issue, and you're going to know better than I do because you're in North Beach. I remember there was a controversy over the library in North Beach.
Mm-hmm.
It's seen as this incredible example of 1950s architecture. I personally think it's just an ugly building, and I don't really care if it was demolished and replaced with something better.
Yeah,
people really get obsessed with these things.
Yeah, there are people who do that for both because they really believe in it, and also for just to create a canard. And the North Beach Library, I think, especially, was a bit more of the latter, simply because a lot of people it was sort of like a conflict between different generations of, shall we say, burghers who live in the neighborhood and who are active. By burgher, I mean B-U-R-G-H-E-R-S, as in the German sense, or people who think of themselves as burghers. Her name is escaping me, but she actually served briefly as District 3 supervisor. Julie Christensen was very instrumental in getting the new library built, and there was also some other controversies about the triangle, that empty part of land next to the library, and what to use of it. And then they had a developer that was threatening to put a spike development there for a while, or a spite house there for a while. It was quite the thing. The library that there is now is quite wonderful, but it was very much to the chagrin of Supervisor Peskin.
Well, I'm glad they did the right thing ultimately.
Yeah.
I read another one about another thing in the Chronicle a few years ago. I don't know if this has been resolved, but there's been a lot of discussion about redeveloping the Park Merced area.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently there was an abandoned movie theater from the early 1970s, and people were saying that this is a unique example of movie theaters from that era, and it has to be left.
Yeah, that was crazy enough that even Myrna Melgard came in and opposed that stance, and pretty much saw it as obstructionist. Yeah. That was pretty. I got to help Susan get in, but yeah, it's like. Let me try to do.
You want me to talk while you're doing that?
Yeah, go ahead and talk a little bit more about it while I give her the link to.
Terrific.
Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to see some people that I know and interact with on X on this space, and I'm looking forward to you coming up and asking questions. I just think that the average person who's looking at this, who doesn't have a lot of real estate experience, is not going to figure this out. And if we can just make it as inexpensive and friction-free for a real expert with real money to buy this thing and redevelop it, and it does have to be redeveloped, and it's not going to be a shopping mall anymore, or at least it's not going to completely be a shopping mall, because the retail footprint in Union Square has shrunk, and it looks like the Union Square proper is the survivor, and the more remote areas near the BART station along Market Street are not the survivor. And so it's still valuable property. It's still crucial to San Francisco's recovery for that area to thrive, and so it's got to be reimagined. And I'm just hoping that the city can facilitate it in a way that somebody can come in there and do what they need to do with limited amount of friction.
So, so basically, your main approach to sort of getting the city together, the best way that they can do to incentivize some of these people to get off the pot and do something with it instead of just sitting on it is essentially to make the terms for redeveloping it and changing its use as liberal as possible.
Yes, that would be my main thing. Now, I am a libertarian, so it's hard for me to actually advocate that the government do something proactive, but I'll break the glass here and say that I do think Mayor Lurie should be actively recruiting investors. It does seem like he sat back and is not really trying to manage this issue, and I think that is a good thing for a civic leader to do. It's not something where he's imposing new taxes or starting new programs. He's just using his bully pulpit to find people who would want to invest in the area.
Interesting. What's your feeling about housing as a use?
I think that would be good. I think it probably would be better as a mixed use development with some kind of retail at the bottom. Something that maybe services the people living on, say, the upper levels. But again, I really want to emphasize that I think it should be very, very open and let whoever wants to come in. But certainly, we think of San Francisco as, or a lot of folks that I see on X, maybe not all of us, think that there's a housing shortage in San Francisco, and you have a valuable piece of property there that could potentially be converted into some form of housing, and that's also true of the those adjacent hotels. And you have almost 3,000 rooms between the Park 55 and the Hilton Union Square. I don't think they're near full occupancy. So turning those into some kind of extended living space, although hopefully not a hotel for drug abusers.
Yeah, exactly.
Would be positive. That's
the real question. I would tend to think you would think that, for instance, if it's in Union Square, most of the past projects that I've seen, like there were people who wanted to convert the I-Magnin building into luxury housing. That seems, frankly, as much as people supposedly complain about luxury housing, that seems to be the best use for it. It would certainly take some pressure off of a lot of, neighborhoods that feel that rich people are coming into their neighborhoods and trying to convert and price up their neighborhoods.
Can I also mention that, as someone who spends a lot of time both in San Francisco and in the Silicon Valley, Santana Row is a great example of a super successful open mall that's open air with housing above. It is not affordable housing. It's, pricey housing, but tons of tech workers in that area, obviously. It's constantly bustling, for the most part safe. There's been a couple of incidents, but I don't ever feel unsafe there. And of course, directly across the street is Valley Fair, which is Westfield Corporation's most lucrative and most successful mall in the world. So you have people like Daniel Lurie and critics say, oh, it's Amazon, it's this, it's that. Every other publication that's done a story about the San Francisco Center has left out that little tiny detail about crime. But, next week I'm going to Valley Fair to do a comparison because Erica Sandberg and I did a visit to the mall in San Francisco about a couple months ago, and now I'm going to follow that up with Valley Fair so people can actually see that it has nothing to do with online shopping and everything to do with people feeling safe and businesses feeling safe enough to stay and thrive.
I think Bay Street in Emeryville is something like that as well, where there's some residential mixed in with the retail. And that mall has been up and down. There was a period where all the restaurant spaces were vacated, but now I think they've filled them again. So that might be another good example.
A lot of people ask me why not do a sort of a AI incubator throughout the whole thing. Couple things on that. One, if you go down to Dogpatch, you'll see they have that in already, just a ton of it. Y Combinator is there, and they've attracted a bunch of other companies. We walked through one about a month ago. Some friends and I walked all through all of those spaces. And I would also caution, just as someone who went through the .com boom and bomb, that AI is certainly changing things, but I would caution people to say it's the future, and we can just fill up buildings with it, and it will all be successful. I think that's again, everybody said that about the .com thing. Oh, it's completely legendary. I mean, this is at the same time when Google was even coming out. People were saying, oh, the .coms, that's it. This is the biggest thing that's ever going to happen in San Francisco. We are now the Silicon Valley. Well, clearly that didn't happen, and San Francisco is still the redheaded stepchild as far as technology goes, because the headquarters of the biggest companies in the world are still located, south of San Francisco. So I caution people saying, let's just fill it full of tech. I don't care what kind of tech. I just don't think that's wise. It has to be mixed use.
Having moved to San Francisco in 2002 and previously calling myself the last person to move to San Francisco during the .com era, I can certainly associate with that comment. Interestingly, Susan, it was as a result of my op-ed getting published by Voice of San Francisco that I came across that proposal. So a reader sent me a slide deck that she had developed around the idea of trying to convert the 2 Hilton hotels and the shopping center into an AI center. And I thought it was very interesting in that you have sort of this nearby kind of live work environment. But again, I don't know what the answer is. I know that somebody who has hundreds of millions of dollars to invest will know what the answer is if they're unleashed to take over these properties.
Shouldn't Mayor Lurie know those people?
That's that's what I would hope. I would assume that he does. And,
I would assume that he at least knows some of them, if not most of them.
I mean, I know some of those people. Do I think that they want to take a chance on a mall? Probably not. Maybe you can get Johnny Ive to move on down from Jackson Square. I don't know. It seems like a stretch.
Oh, well, he would be backed by Sam Altman. There you go.
Well, there you go. I mean, that he's taken over Jackson Square, and somehow things. He and Johnny Ive and Sam Altman clearly think they have some big thing that's going to replace the iPhone.
Yeah.
But I don't see anybody wanting to take a chance on that gigantic mall plus those hotels, all one, unless they have an idea to create an entirely new city, which of course, every time tech people mention that, everybody goes off the roofs about it. So I just don't see that happening.
I think the basic issue here is we're seeing changing uses, not only because of tech industries. I mean, back 30 years ago when tech companies were first starting to, or shall we say, when internet-based companies were starting to first put together, a lot of them weren't even thinking about, getting into commercial real estate or setting up large, brick and mortar footprints. A lot of them were pushing the idea called the virtual corporation, where people would be communicating with each other over the internet out of their homes and making things, as it were. I think the other issue here is COVID. COVID sort of accelerated this situation where people don't necessarily need to come together to perform work. It's a different kind of work. We've been trying to pressure people to come back to work one way or another, and I think we've only been moderately successful in that regard, haven't we?
Yeah, but that does vary by city. I heard recently that New York is now reaching office attendance levels on a par with 2019. I'm probably going to risking being pretty controversial here, because I don't know how you guys feel about this, because I wasn't in contact with you in 2020. But I was very upset by the lockdown. And I think that because San Francisco locked down so hard, it created a situation where people became more used to not coming into the city. And so by overreacting to a public health situation, I'm not saying it wasn't serious and that nothing should be done, but by overreacting to it the way San Francisco did, it created a situation where it was much, much harder for downtown to recover, because people developed new new modes, new ways of being. Like you could live outside the city, maybe go to a coffee shop to do your work, dial into Zoom meetings and go home. And now people don't want to go back. But if that had only been the case for 3 or 4 months until we realized that for the majority of people below, say, 60 or 65, that this wasn't fatal, and that they with some modest precautions they could have reintegrated, I think we would have been a lot better off. But we didn't choose that path. We chose the path of panicking.
Well, I think it can be arguably said that the way we handled the Bay Area generally, collectively, handled the onset of COVID and the lockdowns probably did save the largest amount of lives. But at the same time, I think it also create, you're right. It's changed patterns for a lot of people irreparably, including myself. I mean, I'm surprised sometimes where, I'm at the point where I have to literally remind myself to get out of the house sometimes.
You need to get a dog. That's the only thing that works for me. And since I lost Skylar, it's been rough. I get it. It's like she used to remind me, even during COVID, and now it's hard now because I work at home too. So
we're gonna rescue all the dogs from South Korea that were in the dog meat industry and are now that they're banning the dog meat industry and don't know what to do with the dogs, they're all going to come here and we're all going to raise these dogs.
And you just did. I can't wait to see that story. And I'm by the way, I actually have, just off the topic, but I've been for years a vocal opponent of the dog industry and have written many, many, many stories of music to my ears. But God knows we're still putting down 4 million animals a year in this country. So, so as far as the working at home thing, I will say that the Silicon Valley, the real Silicon Valley, Apple and Google, Facebook, they've been back to work for a very long time. 21, they were ordered back to work. And, some people left because they said, well, I'm used to working at home. And then guess what? The job market tanked. Now they're all like wishing they'd kept their jobs at these big stable companies, right. Or at least Apple stable, Google somewhat stable, Facebook not so much, Meta. But the bottom line is the traffic when I'm going back and forth from San Francisco to here, I see the traffic, really has sadly gotten worse. But in San Francisco, and I'm anywhere where I used to see workers, I don't see them. Part of that problem, too, is that a lot of what was in San Francisco, and I think Mike rightfully calls them internet companies, not tech companies, were never really, they weren't really succeeding as it was. I mean, companies like Yelp, and Zynga and a lot of these companies had sold their real estate. Google sold its real estate. Even in San Francisco, it had a satellite office, and it closed that down. Apple, I think, has closed the majority of its satellite offices there. The buses are gone. That's something that I think people forget. The buses, I can't tell you how many buses, were in my neighborhood on a daily basis, and you just don't see them very much anymore. So I think that a lot of these companies that weren't really, doing that great in brick and mortar as it was, Twitter, they had by and large leased out their spaces to other companies already, and many of those companies went under. So you just have a lot of vacant real estate, and I say that happened before the pandemic, and the pandemic just accelerated that.
You mentioned Yelp, which reminds me to free associate back to an issue that's somewhat more closely related to the mall. So we had Yelp's founder, I think Jerry Stoppelman, put a lot of money into closing the Great Highway.
Yeah, Jeremy.
Jeremy. And we have a little bit of a positive thing going on Market Street right now with Lyft, Uber, and Waymo being able to pick up and drop off there.
Yeah.
But really, Market Street needs to be reopened to cars.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just totally ridiculous. Now, this no car thing is a luxury belief. In 2019, when the city was busy, maybe you could justify it. I wouldn't have even agreed with it then. But now Market Street is struggling, and this is just one more impediment to Market Street recovering because it's so darn hard to get your car, park on Market Street or use Market Street to get to where you need to go.
Yeah, I remember the first time that I went down to Market Street without my car because I thought, well, not allowed to have a car on Market Street anymore. I thought that's okay. I'll take an Uber. And so I took the end Judah down and then decided, because I had a bunch of packages, I'll take the an Uber. And it had to pick me up it had only a few, this is a long time ago too. It only picked me up a few places. The most common place that I get it now is, when I go to the Trader Joe's on 4th and then they pick you up across the street because they're not allowed on Market Street. This is, to me, huge because I really don't have any interest in going to restaurants and things downtown without access to those things. Because frankly, I do take the Muni often. I like the Muni, particularly where I am out in the Sunset, feels safe. But I used to take the N when I worked downtown and come home into the hay, 9, 10 o'clock at night after dinner with friends or whatever. And nowadays, I would not do that on Market Street. It's just too desolate. There's too many drug addicts. It's just a disaster area. And I'm just not willing. So that's why I really don't spend any time down there.
It's bad for the theater also. Sometimes my wife and I will come in to see a show, one of those theaters like around Market and 7th Street.
Right.
And it's always so scary, how are we going to get out of there without anything happening? Are we going to have to walk through the Tenderloin to get an Uber? So, it would really make a lot of sense for you to be able to get picked up right in front of the theater.
Well,
yes.
This is the phenomenon that killed London Breed and her political career, I think, simply because you had this situation with, we have always had this situation where we've isolated so many of our social problems into a combat zone around the Tenderloin. And then COVID caused that situation, COVID and also the opioid epidemic really caused all of this to seep out like a giant ink blot, like a big Rorschach ink blot, and cross borders into places where people were not accustomed to seeing it, such as the theater district, such as Union Square, or even for that matter, if you're driving down Market Street, you may be driving through UN, the part of Market Street where UN Plaza is on the north and 6th Street is the south of that, but you didn't notice it until the last couple of years, where it became, a set from a George Romero movie, and and that really does sink into people's brains when they see that. It's shocking. And we still have that problem to an extent. It's not as visible as it has been in the past few years, but we still have that problem.
Yeah.
I think people just have to, be willing to say out loud, which, Spinderella Knight at the, former Chronicle, now New York Times correspondent refuses to say, which is, crime and drugs. Those are the biggest problems in San Francisco. Without a doubt, anyone who says otherwise is fooling themselves. Daniel Lurie has spent $350,000 on his own personal PR team to tell everybody that everything is fine. It is not fine. And if you come to Silicon Valley and go virtually anywhere other than, there's some problems downtown, but nothing to the degree of San Francisco. But even in the places where they have the, interim housing, you will see no homeless around it, none. You will see no drugs around it. And when I toured that one in the newest one in San Jose with Matt Mahan and Elizabeth Fung from Dignity Moves, and I asked them point blank, why don't I see the homeless around and the drugs and the dealers like I do at the Dignity Moves from housing in San Francisco? Matt Mahan was very blunt. He said, I don't allow it. I want enforcement. I expect enforcement. My chief is on board with that. I've made it clear. I will not tolerate it. Until Daniel Lurie says that, until he gets that tough and says, I will not tolerate dealers, I will not tolerate users, not just dealers, I will not tolerate them dictating this city's future, then nothing is going to change.
Yeah, I think that's a big elemental part of it.
It's just, I don't get what it is that people don't understand. He can tell me till the cats come home how lovely everything is, and oh, look, another concert in Golden Gate Park. But then you watch a video from JJ, or like Erica and I, went out to the Mission at night with JJ, and you saw the story that Erica filed on the Civic Center Inn, the hotel there. Unbelievable. I mean, I'm in the middle of writing and I get this, breathless call from Erica telling me that there's an injured dog. I obviously am the dog journalist, so I got in touch with my contacts at ACC. They're understaffed, overworked. They got someone out there. They saved the dog. The guy is trying to, get people to. He's having the locksmiths having to open the doors because they've locked themselves in the rooms. That would not happen in any other civilized city in the area. Period. And the fact that, Daniel Lurie is so soft that he continues to allow them to dictate. I could not believe in that video when he was there on 6th Street with his entourage in the daytime saying how good it looked, because they were pushing them off of that particular block. And then he says that he's got an alley across the way where they can go and hang out. Are you kidding me? No. Bus tickets and stay away orders. That's it.
Yeah, I want to build on that theme, Susan, as somebody who used to live in the city and now lives in one of the suburbs, specifically Walnut Creek. It used to be that, okay, you could, from a retail point of view or an experiential point of view, you could substitute some things by staying in Walnut Creek or Corte Madera or Palo Alto or San Jose and, not go into the city. But still there were, several things that you really feel like I really need to go in the city to do those things. And as things don't improve in San Francisco, more and more things get duplicated in these exurban areas. Like we just had Original Joe's open out here. So there's another thing I don't need to go to San Francisco to do. And I think about it when I argue with some of the transit bros on X, like, why do I want to bother driving into San Francisco, paying some exorbitant amount for parking or parking on the street and risking being bipped, or then, dealing with transit and, who knows what I'm going to interact with there. And I have to admit, by the way, I take part a lot and has actually gotten better over the last couple of years. A lot of that is, down to the more secure fare gates that Deborah Allen got us.
Yep.
But I mean, it has gotten better. But anyway, still, I still find it amusing that people will sometimes go on social media with videos of these people doing these acrobatic performances on a BART car, and I'm thinking, I don't want to see that. I'm sorry. I want to just get to where I'm going quietly. I want to be in my space. I want other people to stay in their space. I don't want this person, doing acrobatics and potentially falling on me while I'm just trying to sit on BART. So it's like getting back to the point. I just think the hassle of going into San Francisco starts to eclipse the benefits of going to San Francisco, especially when you have a dead mall right in the center of it. So, you're absolutely right. Daniel Lurie has got to take more action than he's currently doing.
Well, the other part about that, and I will agree with you on it, is in San Jose, they actually got things that San Francisco didn't get because these places did not want to be in San Francisco. Originally, Italy was looking at San Francisco, or was being courted by London Breed to take over the bottom of the San Francisco Center. And they pivoted real quick and went to Valley Fair, which built out a completely new space for them, has added thousands of parking spaces. Still can barely get in there even on a weekday. In fact, I haven't even been able to get in yet. I will go when I do my tour of Valley Fair, like I did with the San Francisco Center, to do the comparison. I'll fight my way in. But the other thing they did not get was Din Tai Fung, which was originally scheduled or looking at being courted by San Francisco, and also chose Valley Fair. So it's now come down to things opening other places rather than opening in San Francisco and becoming a destination for people to come from all over the place to go. When Din Tai Fun first opened, they had 3 to 4 hour waits, and it just is something that cannot be denied. I mean, again, I spend a lot of time both places. I live both places, but I spent the majority of my life full time living in San Francisco, and I deteriorate from the time I moved back after college until I came to take care of my stepmom down in Los Gatos. I watched it deteriorate, and the more I am both places, the more I realize that Daniel Lurie is going to lose people quickly if he doesn't do something differently than what London Breed did. And thus far, I don't see any difference. I mean, he talks a lot. He has a private PR firm and a nicer car because he paid for it. But I don't see any difference in the way he's running the city. The drug addicts are still controlling the city. That's it. I mean, it's the drug users, the drug tourists, and the dealers still feel zero fear. And I can honestly tell you, anywhere I go in Silicon Valley, I wouldn't know a drug dealer. I mean, I know they obviously are out somewhere, but you will not see them in public. Wherever they are, it is not in the neighborhoods. It is not anywhere in front of businesses, anywhere in a civilized part of the city will you see it. I haven't even seen it downtown. And downtown has the most problems probably of any place in the Silicon Valley. But go to Cupertino and see if you can find open air drug use and drug dealers. You will not. Sunnyvale, you will not. Los Gatos, Palo Alto, South San Jose, West San Jose, even in East San Jose, it's even gotten better. I just think having a strong mayor is imperative, and Daniel Lurie is not that guy. He's just not.
Yeah,
and
so
I don't know
you have
what
to
to
go
say.
to Los Angeles to see things like you see in San Francisco.
Yeah, you do. I mean, in Oakland has it.
Yeah.
I have friends that live in Oakland, but don't have any interest to be there. I mean, and I used to go to Oakland quite often, and I used to work in Oakland a long time ago, right next to Hegenberger, and I used to walk that pedestrian bridge at night back to the BART station and take it back into the city. I wouldn't do that now.
No.
It's just changed, and the mayors have changed in Oakland as well. So I wasn't a huge Libby fan, but much better than what they've had the last two after her, and the next two after her. But speaking of Walnut Creek, I just had a quick question: is it really hot there today? Because I'm going to pick up a foster dog there.
Well, it was in the upper 90s yesterday, and I think it's just going to be slightly better today. So buckle up.
Oh gosh. Okay.
It's only 83 right now.
We've got somebody who's asking to speak with the call sign California Doge. Okay. Perhaps we could have him say his piece for a while if we're all up for that.
Sure.
He's been winning a while, so we'll see if he's able to. Are you there?
Hi.
So what do you think is going on with all of our situation with downtown development in San Francisco Center?
Yeah, I think it's simplistic, but, me being a tech worker and working multiple times for multiple companies and startups in San Francisco over the years. It's crime, it's open drug use, it's homeless, mentally ill homeless people that we feel terrible seeing every day. It's just a horror show, and it's gone up and down in cycles over the years. But I mean, this is, I'd say 3x that it's the worst it's ever been. Mm-hmm. It's just horrific. And I guess in some ways it's gotten a little bit better tactically on certain streets, as you guys pointed out. But overall, I don't want to subject myself or employees or my family to the kind of abuse or just psychological trauma of witnessing some of the areas. I mean, it's just really bad. I don't want to be hyperbolic about this stuff, but it is the problem of Oakland, San Francisco, and you guys are rightfully pointing out that San Jose has made a significant attempt and been relatively successful at keeping these types of problems at bay by just being strict.
Yes.
Is saying, there's some things that aren't allowed. You can't live on this sidewalk.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You can't. If you want to shoot up privately and do heroin, good for you. You can't do it on the street. If you do that, we're going to arrest you.
That's right.
It's simple, but some of these things I think are difficult to wrap people's heads around, but they are simple solutions to these seemingly complex problems.
I agree 100%. And I don't know if you were around during the .com era, but when
Yes.
So I worked down at LookSmart, which was down at the Townsend, and we had eventually second in brand, and they built, of course, a huge giant office, and then went down the tubes. But I felt no fear whatsoever, leaving there late at night. I often came in late, worked late, and no problem whatsoever hopping buses going back to the Haight. And it
Sure.
It wasn't even bustling at all. Then there really wasn't much going on down in that area like there is now. I mean, once the stadium was built, then that definitely during games, but in the off season, there weren't very many restaurants or anything, and it still didn't have hordes of drug users moving in and taking over every vacant space they saw. You didn't really
Sure.
see it. And so even in the marina, when we had our office on Chestnut Street, we would do all-nighters for our deadline because we were always running late as most writers are. And sorry, Mike, I'm always late. But we basically, we would leave. I would park somewhere in the side reads, like Avila or somewhere around there. And I did bring my pit bull with me because I didn't want to leave her for 10 or 15 hours. And, have her walk. She'd be with me, of course, when we walked back. But I will say we rarely encountered a single person except maybe some drunk frat boys or, something like that. But I never felt worried that I was going to stumble upon some crazy guy that now is such a regular sight in the marina. It's gotten worse. Without a doubt, it's gotten worse. I was in the marina actually meeting Steve and Cheryl for coffee a few weeks ago, and I honestly, it was 8:30 in the morning, and I saw, but right when I got out of my car, I saw probably 12 people just in various states of lying around, wandering with a blanket over them, barefoot, shuffling. And then a couple days later, Mike and Eric and I were in North Beach having coffee, and same thing.
Yeah, there were
Something's
several
going on.
going up and down Columbus Street at that time. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, so many. I mean, so many.
Yeah.
Something's up. I mean, what is going on? Are they letting them out? I mean, I've asked as many people as I can find.
And,
I don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
No, that's okay.
Well, I think the word has gotten out, and there's been some even very recent interviews. I don't know if you saw the most recent one. I think it was actually by JJ, of a kid from Philadelphia that came out here because he felt that he was invited. So I feel terrible for people in the state they're in, but we're causing this by tacitly allowing it.
True.
Without, if people knew, like they do in San Jose, it's a great example, that certain types of public behavior is not allowed, then it won't happen.
That's right.
It is kind of that simple. And if people know that they can't get free stuff and free drugs and free equipment to do drugs in a particular area, then not as many people that have that problem or are susceptible to that problem will show up. And unfortunately, the welcome mat has been put out for all kinds of bad behavior. And I was hopeful as well that Lori was going to fix things. He made good sounds, said some of the right things. And as you're pointing out, he's turned out to be, unfortunately, weak and not strong personally enough to get stuff done. I mean, we need somebody like Giuliani.
Yeah.
Frankly, it's gotten that bad. I don't think it's quite as horrific as it was in the 70s in New York, at least from the stories. I wasn't there, but it's somebody needs to think about the broken windows kind of approach to policing of if your town and your block or your house looks like a pile of crap, people are going to treat it like a pile of crap, and that's it. I think what's happening.
And again, the story I wrote this week, the statistics on the first 6 months of Proposition 36 came out. San Francisco is at the bottom, both for treatment mandated drug felonies, also at the bottom for petty crime arrests and charges. So, and the DA, definitely, I have a quote from the DA that I'll be adding into my first story and into my second story, which is on petty theft. I did drugs last week. They have all kinds of excuses, and, that's fine. However, how come San Jose has 275 cases they filed? And then you see a quote from one of the DAs in San Jose saying that they're prosecuting them whether they have treatment beds or not, because they want to send the message that they need more treatment beds. So until then, they're getting their treatment either in jail or in prison. And until Gavin Newsom wakes up and starts to open the purse strings for this thing that was very, much voted in by constituents, until that happens, San Jose's stopping the prosecution. They're using Prop 36 to prosecute, and they're putting people either in jail if they have other offenses or priors. They put them, and they have an ability to send them back to prison. They are. So that's where San Francisco, again, I will say till the cows come home, Boudin was a disaster, but I'm not seeing exactly a super strong DA in Brooke Jenkins either. So, she's better as far as, talking the talk, but when you come in last in implementation for both petty crimes and drugs, are supposed to be set to treatment, you come in last at all the counties, including Alameda County, I don't care what excuses you give me, you need to revisit your charging addendum.
Well, allow me to offer a slight rebuttal to everything I've just heard in the last few minutes. These things take time, and part of it is the political structure of this city, and frankly, cities generally. We have allowed a specific political class to gain traction, and these people are able to they're able to bring 500 people to City Hall to show up and argue their view at a moment's notice. And those, we did not vote for them. We voted the people that they supported out, but they're still there. And particularly in the case of homelessness policy, they're in the actual city departments. They're not just in the pressure groups or the nonprofit partners. They're in the actual city departments as well. So that's a big issue. And it's a lot of convincing people inside those structures and rooting people out that takes a while.
I agree with that. As far as the DA goes, though, I will argue she wrote the charging addendum. Mm-hmm. So you can't blame Moody for that. And you can't blame the judges. She wrote the charging addendum saying that they will only charge a case that's if another case has happened within 5 years. That means you can't go back past when Boudin was in office. But it also means that Boudin wasn't in office over the last 3 of those years. And are you going to tell me that there hasn't been a single case of one of these drug tourists that had some kind of an arrest that warrants that he can be prosecuted? I'm having a really hard time getting my head around what the DA's office sent me, and which you guys will see this week as the excuse for why they're only prosecuting cases if there was another felony in the last 5 years, another charged case. I mean, again, we can't keep blaming Boudin, That's why I titled one of my subheads, why did Boudin do this to us? Why did Chess Boudin do this to us? I mean, at a certain point, you can't blame him anymore. He's been gone for a long time now. And we have this ability to charge, and I will bring up again, then how come the other counties, including Alameda, who came in second to last, are charging these cases and getting people put away? Is it that San Francisco doesn't want to put them in jail, so they'd rather just not charge them? It opens up a lot of questions for me.
I mean, I like Mike's point in the sense that it parallels a lot of what you hear going on at the federal level, where, like it or not, and I'm not saying necessarily these are good or bad, but some of the Trump administration appointees are trying to change federal policy. And especially in the first administration, they didn't get very far because the career civil servants didn't want it. And so, within the homeless industrial complex of San Francisco, it's very well possible that you have a deep state of people who just want things to continue the way they're continuing, and just changing the people at the top doesn't necessarily move the needle that far.
Although I would point out that, removing the partisan dimension from this, what we talk about when we talk about the New York Miracle and the implementation of broken windows and, broken windows policy and what they were able to do first with the transit police and then with the regular police, that actually started under David Dinkins. It was a policy package that Giuliani sort of, inherited. He expanded it a bit. But then again, it also started to suffer after a while and went away. It's a question of putting together the metrics, the public will, and being able to essentially, maintain that policy for a long enough period that it actually works. And that's very hard to do when, even on a national level, your budget cycle is like 5 years. And, people's attention spans get, turned around from year to year. So it's a pretty big struggle.
And also the issue of the underlying ideology. I mean, when I moved to San Francisco, I noticed, even back in 2002, there were a lot of people lying on the street. Yeah. And my attitude is, why is this okay? And when I talk to people back then, and maybe even now, why are you trying to criminalize homelessness? They just don't have enough money, and you're being very selfish to think that they should find an indoor place to live.
Right. Which is absolutely ridiculous.
As long as that's the prevailing ideology in San Francisco, it's really not going to change. I mean, I travel a lot internationally, including my wife's home country, Peru. We go to Lima a lot. This doesn't happen. It's only in the United States, and it's not anywhere near as bad in most states as it is in California. For some reason, we've just decided it's okay to just lie in the street and take drugs and make a mess. And until more people think that that's no longer acceptable, I guess it'll continue.
Yeah.
But that doesn't stop the DA from prosecuting more cases under Prop 36 for thefts and for treatment mandated drug felonies.
It doesn't. Agreed.
And yes, she's elected.
It does lead to the problems.
Sorry, what?
It does lead to the. There's a slight delay. It does lead to the problems that you guys are focused on with this cast. Is that it reduces foot traffic? Because people like me, or they're maybe thinking about visiting San Francisco for a conference, or going, to have dinner, or to maybe launch my company. I'd have to be, there's so many other better options, including obviously doing stuff virtually. But there's so many better options just in the Bay Area, not to mention out of state, but certainly in the Bay Area. Walnut Creek obviously being one of them, but than going to San Francisco. It's difficult to get in and out. It's certainly not parking friendly. It's gotten better than it was, a decade ago, but it's certainly not friendly to that. And then add on all this rest of this stuff. I mean, you lead to, probably one of the most beautiful malls that I've ever seen, certainly up there, being essentially shuttered. It's unfortunate that the government leadership doesn't recognize that one leads to the next. And apparently they're not connecting those dots, and it's just not going to turn around until somebody with a stronger, able perhaps to stand up to the NGOs that are encouraging folks to live on the streets. It's certainly not discouraging, but I think in some cases encouraging. It's their right, they think. It's just not going to turn around.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we all agree on that part, but I wanted to talk more about economic focused solutions in this regard. So I wanted to bring it back to Mark and talk about, what other economic solutions can we do in order, because getting people on the point about foot traffic is really important. And in many ways, it's a lot like water to brine the pump. Once you get people on the streets, everyday people on the streets, first off, the bad actors tend not to want to hang around. And secondly, if you get enough of the everyday people on the street, it's going to attract more everyday people on the street. So what can we do to, not only I think this mall, I mean, we've been talking about, for instance, the Jollibee that's supposed to be showing up across the street from the mall for years now.
Sorry.
I miss my Filipino fried chicken.
Oh, they have it in San Jose.
Far away.
I'll bring you some. I'll bring you some on my way up.
What kind of incentive are we?
You're crashing the city here. You shouldn't be encouraging your editor to leave the city.
I'll bring some up next time. No, I agree. It's I'm just laughing because anybody that knows Better Soma knows that's been a running joke with us for years on X about, but Jollibees, they're opening Jollibees. It's so hard to, let's not forget the fact that San Francisco is not a business friendly city. Other cities work far harder to encourage businesses to open and then taking care of them when they are open. So I think that you have this prevailing attitude for decades in San Francisco. Everybody wants to open a business here, so we don't have to work hard on it.
I will qualify that as well, because we, especially in the last year and especially since COVID, we've seen a lot of legislation that has been aimed at protecting existing businesses, existing small businesses, especially, the legacy businesses,
Yes.
first year free, that sort of thing. But in general, that's great for encouraging people to start new businesses and to protect established local businesses. But we may wonder whether or not that's enough. Maybe we need, to look at, chains.
Yeah.
The various businesses that up until now we have figured, should not be encouraged to set foot in the city.
Absolutely great. The formula retail restriction needs to go. I mean,
It was horrible.
If the choice is the 13th location of some national chain and a vacant storefront, I think we should all be for the former rather than the latter. And we're getting a lot too much of the latter.
The greatest example I always give is Pet Food Express. Pet Food Express was founded with a tiny little storefront in San Francisco. You used to have to squeeze through the cat trees to get to the dog food. They became successful. They hit their 11 stores in the Bay Area, and they wanted to open on Lombard Street in a vacant lot that had been a bank. And Aaron Peskin in particular, who wasn't even in office at the time, called up the head of animal care and control at the time, Rebecca Katz, told her he was going to have her job if she continued to support the opening. Had Joe Eskenazi from Mission Local write a hit piece on me, absolutely admitted it to me years later and apologized with a small smile, saying that he was Aaron 2.0 now, and he apologized for what Aaron 1.0 did. People fought it. The planning commission, the board of supervisors, they all fought it. And so guess what? No pet store, and all the little stores closed anyway, because that was a case where, parking and easier to go to. Let's be honest, at one point I used to go all the way down to, the Daly City or whatever, South City to do shopping for that stuff. Who wants to carry a big bag of dog food, 5 blocks? So basically, Pet Food Express, not only did they not open, but they then at that point said, we will never ever open another store in San Francisco. We're done. They just opened another one, but guess what? It's in the Presidio, so they're not under San Francisco law. So that was an amazing company, homegrown success story. And San Francisco not only forced them away, but angered them to the point where the owner will never open again in San Francisco.
Well, we should have been, instead of, belittling Bed Bath & Beyond for not being as successful as they once were, and they're trying to build back, we should have been trying to do whatever we can to have them open in major cities like San Francisco, because there's certainly a lot of opportunities.
It should be remembered they actually used to be here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Howard.
Not only did we, not encourage them when they, said, hey, it's not, good business to open a storefront in California, we have, our promoter in chief going out and basically saying, we don't want you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like just baffling.
Nah.
Not even sure what to say. It's
Absolutely
bizarre.
Yeah. So, yeah. And again, Daniel Lurie is far more business friendly outwardly than Lennon Bree. He's also a party boy, but he spends at least, more of his time promoting businesses and pushing business. I think he's business friendly, but, just a mayor being business friendly doesn't discount the fact that San Francisco is, not chain friendly. The rules and regulations around opening a business are still a lot of headwinds. I know people that have chosen other cities to open because they feel that it's kind of a two whammy. They're like, it's too hard to open, plus the city's going down the tube, so I'm going to move my business elsewhere. So I think San Francisco needs to get on the ball and start encouraging more than just AI companies, because again, I'll just say .com. That's all I got to say. I mean, you just don't know what these businesses, if they're going to survive. Eventually, the glut of them. The idea of taking the San Francisco mall and turning it into nothing but AI companies is absurd to me.
Short-sighted.
So
Very short-sighted.
I've got
The news around.
I have Lisa who wants to speak. Can we go ahead and let her on?
Sure.
Lisa, are you out there? Lisa, are you out there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Yes, I just wanted to say something about the homeless people, because my daughter's been out there for 4.5 years, okay, on the streets. I have a very good friend that keeps me in touch with her, and his name's JJ. Hi, JJ.
Love JJ.
You can't let people just keep doing what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
They have to pay consequence. And I'm not saying punish them. I'm saying you can't let them stay on the street. If they boosted, stolen things, they need to be held accountable by law. If they need to go to jail or treatment, they're not even given that choice right now. I've sat in court many times praying to God they would at least hold her for some time. Then she would ask for me, right? Then
Yes.
I can help her. I cannot help her now. Me and JJ, we both asked for her. Please, you want to come home? She's not ready. She's a person who's chemically dependent can't in their own mind be ready.
Yeah, exactly. They're going to be stuck
Because
out
they're,
there.
that's right. They're
Yeah.
sick. Yeah, they're stuck and nobody's there helping them. They're going to let her die in the street. If she was allowed some time away from drugs, and I'm not even talking medically assisted, that should be only temporary. What I'm afraid is they're going to sometime in the future, oh, you're medically assisted for life. No, they need to let them have a chance for a real life. And that's not happening. You know, they need to be held accountable, and they're not. They're given money. They're, oh, here, live in the street if you want to. I mean, they gave a whole building for people to stay in, that the motel that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah. They just let them.
Why?
They just let them move in. They didn't even. They just allowed
That
it.
shouldn't. No other city would let that happen.
I agree.
They would board up every window. You're not staying here. You know, I grew up with drug addicted people in my household. I was never drug addicted. You know, my mom was. She abandoned both kids in an apartment, me and my brother.
Wow.
In another state from my dad. He had to go pick us up. Lucky that they found us, my dad.
Wow.
You know, and I had cousins who were manufacturing and producing meth and selling it. The only thing that saved them was jail and rehab from prison.
Yeah.
Okay. That they need to get tough on this, or they're just letting people just die. How many? 2, 3, 4, 5 a day? And they let this happen.
We just, you know, Gina McDonald and I and our data guy just worked for months on a story about the 5-year totals, and it's almost 3,800 people who have died of drug overdoses in 5 years in San Francisco.
Yeah, well, you know what? People sometimes they fudge that and they'll say, oh, they died of something else.
No, we know for a fact these are drugs. We know for a fact.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying they're not drugs. What I'm saying is that they're drugs, but then they're saying, oh, that guy had COVID.
Yeah.
Instead. So I think there's more people than that dying.
Yeah, these are, yeah, I'm, you know, not very well. The next article we're doing is people who died outside, but what was the proximity to the supportive housing? Because a lot.
I don't want to be a conspiracy theorist, but you know, people like hiding their stuff. You know?
Oh, that's why, you know, it's taken Gina over 2 years to get all of this information.
Exactly. I know. They've been working hard, the mothers of against drug deaths and stuff.
Yeah, and they have an event you probably know about Sunday, today, this evening.
Yes, I'm sick, so I'm not going to be able to make that. But anyway, if you want business to come back, you have to clean that up, really.
Yep.
I mean, I don't go there because I saw a 6-foot tall man. He had to be at least 300 pounds, and he was in the middle of an intersection, and he was upset with every car that went down the street, and he was like MMA, you know? So people, you know, it's like, why do I want to drive down the street over there?
I agree.
You know? And you got weirdos on the train, so it's like, what do they want? You know, you want something better for people. San Francisco used to be such a booming city. People loved to go shopping downtown.
Yep.
Loved it. Yep. You had so much foot traffic. It was everywhere. I used to work downtown. And I used to go there. I mean, we had a business downtown San Francisco. Beautiful. Loved the people, everything. And they let it just go to hell. It's not fair to the addicts. It's not fair to the people that live there. You know, people got jobs. They got businesses. Who let somebody who put all their effort in life to their business, and they're hiring tons of people, and you're throwing it away for what? I don't know why they're doing this. I'm going to go now, but I probably ramble on. So,
well, Lisa, anytime you want to, you know, tell your story, you know, reach out to me via, you know, JJ, and we can do a story.
I will. Okay. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that was tough to hear.
To hear that the city, again, you know, to hear that, and again, this does all go back to the economic health of the city. To hear that the city, here's a mother and an advocate like JJ who's here asking them, please hold her accountable. Please, we want to hold her accountable. A mother very much involved, not the absentee mother that people always claim is the reason. And often, I would say 9 out of 10 times that's not true, because all the moms that I know are actively looking for their kids, actively trying to get their kids help. And yet the city's saying, she's not ready. That's not the answer. The answer is, you want her to get help. You want us to hold her accountable. We're going to do that.
Yeah.
And that's not happening.
If I could just add a bit, I think she's just pointing out that the collateral damage from all this stuff. Sorry, I have family that this has happened to as well, so it's really upsetting. But the collateral damage of all the families that want to help their family members and they can't because of the way things are set up it's obviously very personal for me, and obviously very personal for Lisa.
And for me as well. I had 2 cousins that were drug addicts and ended up back east. They got put in prison for armed robbery, and that is what got them off of drugs. And people don't like to hear that, but the fact is they came out, went into, halfway house. They ended up turning their lives around.
Yeah.
So, I'm not saying that jail is the answer for everyone, but at a certain point, what the guy in San Jose, the district attorney in San Jose said, hey, we're putting them in jail or in prison to get their treatment, because that's what Prop 36 allows us to do. And so that's what we're doing. We don't have enough treatment beds. And by the way, something a lot of people don't know is that's the county, right? So San Jose is under Santa Clara County. That's their responsibility. The treatment beds, mental health beds, that falls under the county. San Francisco is a city and a county, so they're responsible for the mental health and the drug treatment beds as well.
Right.
And yet they don't have enough. But neither does San Jose, and they're still making Prop 36 work by going ahead and putting them in jail, putting them in prison when warranted. And, something's got to give. And that's why San Jose has prosecuted in 6 months 273 cases of treatment mandated drug felonies, and San Francisco has charged 1.
So isn't a component of this, though, sorry, I've recovered, that the people that have the compounding problems of mental illness and which generally living on the streets leads to drug use and drug addiction, isn't it the folks that perhaps their hearts are in the right place by attempting to show compassion to people with these problems, but they get stuck on the mental illness part and get past it, and they get to this kind of it's their right or their choice to live rough and to
Well, in San Francisco, I've been covering this for 20 years. In San Francisco, that is not the case. In San Francisco, the case is quite simply the Coalition on Homelessness. And
right.
The other, if you read my article that I worked on with Gina, you'll see that the permanent supportive housing, people that are running those, the top 5 contributed 70% of the deaths since 2020, the drug overdose deaths. That's because they get millions of dollars, but they subscribe to harm reduction. People sometimes, as JJ can tell you, sometimes they're in their hotel room for a week or more before anybody notices. There's no experts involved. None of them are experts. They're collecting big fat, checks from the city. Right. And I think you have to blame the Board of Supervisors and the mayor as well, because in the case of the 3,800 drug deaths that happened since 2020, you have the Episcopal Community Services is the number 1 supportive housing death by their buildings. They've had the most deaths in their buildings. And just recently, the Board of Supervisors unanimously passed a 2-year, $72 million extension, and the mayor signed off on it. Not only that, but he still has them running his crown jewel 833 Bryant Street, which he sold everybody on during the campaign. Look what I did, faster and better than the city. It's actually a disaster. And, I've written about that as well. The guy was dead there for 5 days. Nobody noticed, that kind of thing. And yet he's still using them and has partnered with them over the years at Tipping Point. I told everyone when Daniel Lurie was running that he, was a very much supporter of harm reduction and supportive housing when he ran Tipping Point, and he hasn't changed. He's still donating, by the way, to Home Rise, who was in the top 5 for deaths as well. Tipping Point still donates to them despite his claims that they hold them responsible, and they're being investigated for fraud and corruption as well. So you do have to look to the leaders, but you also can look at the Coalition on Homelessness, because they are those ones that Mike is talking about who can bring 500 people by sending out a mass mailing, showing up with their handwritten signs with their Sharpie pens and saying, let everybody do whatever they want, downtown is for drug users. I think that we really need to, as I keep saying, take them out of the conversation. We have, advocates in San Francisco that have big mouths and do nothing, and have for 2 decades caused more of the problems than they've ever solved. JJ has already saved more people than the Coalition on Homelessness has in 20 years. That's all I have to say about them. They need to be taken out of the conversation, absolutely positively removed, which Daniel Lurie has done, but it needs to be permanent, and they need to be shoved out of the conversation 100%.
It needs to be persistent, essentially, because you're never going to be able to get these people completely out of the arguments, but you've got to be able to ensure that they're not the ones who rule the day.
Yes.
And you have to make sure that they don't get taxpayer funding.
Yeah, it's
right.
Virtuous
Exactly.
cycle right now.
Exactly. That's a very big issue. And to go back to one of our guests was talking about, the compassion arguments are, this whole thing is caused for the most part by path dependence and corruption and self-dealing, but the compassion argument is used as a huge weapon in this regard in terms of public opinion.
And there are advocates for the homeless other places. I mean, they've been clearing the giant encampment in San Jose that's in the path of the airport, and they've got it almost done. But they have advocates that stand out there and they get on camera and they say the same stuff, right? And there's not enough housing, but it's they don't have any power. That's the difference. They have no power in the government. And, one of the biggest problems you have in San Francisco is that Jennifer Friedenbach is on the very she's the president of the Coalition on Homelessness, but she was the number one pusher of Prop C. She was lobbied full time for it with Mark Benioff and Kristen Evans. And now she's also the one controlling the money on the Our City, Our Home fund, and that needs to end. She needs to be removed from any contact with the money. She makes the decisions on what happens with the money. And I know because insiders have told me that are, around and see it, she is the one telling them how the money should be spent, and they just bow down to her.
Yeah,
and that needs to stop.
It was a horrifying swindle.
And Mark Benioff goes, I've talked to him about it. He goes between, it was a bad idea and I don't support it anymore, to, it's the best thing ever and people are being saved. Actually, they're not. Less than, and this is their number, so I would say it's probably even less. Since the money was released to them in 2021, they've built less than 1,200 units, net units of housing. And, when they say we've, helped 2,500 households, what does that even mean? It could mean that they just, kept them in the house. They don't say. There's no details. They need a full audit. Every single permanent supportive housing nonprofit needs to lose their contract and have to reapply, and they all need a full audit. Period.
Isn't it kind of? I think you guys touched on this early on when I started listening. That it takes a strong leader. It takes a strong mayor. Because even if the mayor doesn't directly have control over some of these implementations, some of these propositions and other issues, but it certainly has the bully pulpit. And love or hate what Trump has done in DC, he has made a huge impact on crime there. And I hope it's long lasting, but it's caused the mayor in that town to change her mind, at least short term, where she is now talking about how she's going to, aggressively hire more police. Now, let's see if she actually does it. But I do think that, if we can somehow it doesn't have to be a Republican, it doesn't have to be a libertarian. It can be a Democrat who's, wants to actually save the city. Somebody who's going to come in and rightfully, like you mentioned, somebody like a Dinkins is going to come in and actually, say this, we're not going to put up with this anymore. Let's fix these things. Let's get people back to the city, which will lead
That's what happened in San Jose, right? That's what happened. They got that man. He came in. He said, "I'm not." And by the way, he beat a career politician, and Cindy Chavez, and who would have just done the same old, like Ricardo was doing. But Matt Mahan came in from, by the way, the startup industry, comes from tech, and he said, I've been an assembly member, and I've got some experience under my belt, but what I don't have is major connections to the insiders. He actually is the true outsider that Daniel Lurie claimed to be and isn't, because maybe a lot of people don't know this, but his wife has worked for Gavin Newsom for over 2 decades as his confidential, they're called a confidential, what is it called, Mike? Confidential assistant? So she's worked for him for 2 decades in the mayor's office and then followed him to Sacramento. So, I mean, they've been on double dates. Don't lie and say they haven't. So, they're friends. And he's not an outsider. He's not even close to an outsider. He had Dwayne Jones, who, went to 59 counts of fraud on speed dial. I wrote a story about it during the campaign. He thought Dwayne Jones was a great guy. He was, Mayor Lee, and he did Super Bowl city that pushed the homeless onto Division Street. So he's been actively involved as an insider for a very long time. And for him now to stand and talk is just not enough anymore. And you can't fix, economics. And I think that the mall says it all, right? If any other proprietor thought that mall, for example, the people that own Santana Row, if they thought that was viable, there'd be a bidding war. But nobody thinks it's viable, and that's the problem. Don't you think so, Mark? I mean,
nobody wants it.
Mark, don't you think that there must be someone out there that if they thought it was viable that would buy it?
Well, that's my core argument. Is I think the city has to make sure that there's as few restrictions as possible, so that it's as cheap as possible to turn it around. But I can't disagree that the fact that nobody stepped up through 7 rounds of auctions is not a good sign.
No, it's not.
When is the next? Do we know?
September 4th.
Oh Lord! And what happened in the last auction? Do we know?
Well, they just keep postponing it.
Yeah.
No. So nothing's happened. So why? Is that because there's no bidders?
That's what I think.
Oh,
yes. There's no bidders for the amount that they want.
What do they want?
The minimum bid.
Yeah. Well, that's not disclosed, but
of course it isn't.
I mean, the last rating agency valuation that I saw was $73 million. So it's really down from, what it was. And the argument that everyone should pay $300 to buy it. That's pretty crazy.
Wait, what?
Based on the old.
What's this?
Is it Kevin
we
Trung
talked about before you logged on.
Yeah.
Kevin Trung at the Standard wrote this editorial saying, if everybody in the city pitched in a little over $300, they could buy that. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's a shame because his coverage has been very good. So I was very disappointed to see him go off the deep end on that.
I'll stick with my Apple stock, thanks.
Yeah, no,
That's just it. There is a Standard cracking the whip saying, you need to do something weird to get more readers.
Well, I think that goes to something that I think you wanted to cover, and I'm not sure you have time now, but some of the design ideas that I think Erica talked about, like the idea of the 4-mile-long bench. I don't think that's a reality-based solution to the problem.
Not just 4 miles; it undulates and goes around in a circle or come like I don't know. And then when Erica or someone in the audience asked, like, what about, won't that just be a 4-mile long bench for the homeless to sleep on? She said they're a part of the landscape and that's okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I was just at SFO as Susan knows, and so I was reminded they have these big, long, moving sidewalks there. There should be, in addition to undergrounding all the utilities, which we've never gotten to do and need to do, we should have moving sidewalks along Market. You don't need bicycles or cars or anything like that.
Especially up the hills, that would be great.
Exactly.
All right, guys. I have to sign off because I have to go to Walnut Creek and pick up a foster dog.
Yeah, it is coming on to 12:30. So I wanted to ask Mark if he had sort of a closing statement on, like, for instance, when we're talking about this minimum bid, is that set by the owners? And again, these owners are sort of the same people that figure, oh, we can just hold on to this until things change.
Well, no, again, remember, the owners are now bondholders, and I don't think the bondholders really care that much, but it may be that the servicer who's representing them is asking for too much money, maybe to keep this thing going for longer than it needs to. There just isn't a lot of transparency into the whole situation. But yeah, again, I do hope that Mayor Laurie, I know we've been not saying a lot of kind things about him today, but I do hope if he hears any of this, that he will try to step in and find a champion to buy it, and then provide the regulatory relief that's necessary to help that buyer succeed, because San Francisco really needs it.
How about turning it into a big concert venue, and instead of Golden Gate Park, you could have everything at the mall.
Right, and you could have
soccer. A lot of people on the west side
would
support that.
Yeah, we could hear can hear all the concerts from where we are.
I would close my involvement with saying that back in 2010 in San Antonio, there was certainly not as big, but there was a huge mall that also went bankrupt, and Rackspace bought it and essentially made it their headquarters. Seemed a little weird at the time, but when I visited, my companies had partnered with Rackspace, they loved it, and it was it was in heavy use. The city liked it. It was a really positive outcome for everyone. There was a lot of people that poo-pooed it before they did it. So that could be, rather than trying to split it up to little co-ops, try to get somebody like to make it their headquarters. And if they say no, then ask why. Maybe try to make some changes.
Just an anchor tenant of any kind would be helpful, but I think if that person or that company existed, we'd know by now, because it's $73 million is a deal for that property with incredible architecture. It's one of my favorite buildings in the city. I cannot tell you the time I've spent in that mall, and Eric and I both were talking about how much time we had spent over our lifetimes in that mall and the memories. And just, both of us just stood there and listened to the creepy, echoey elevator music, because it was echoing. There was no people in there. So the music was this cheerful music, but it just didn't fit the moment. And it's just a very sad thing. And I think if that anchor tenant existed, we'd know by now. And I think, groups like the ones that own Santana Row, they've just invested millions more in Santana Row. So they have office spaces now. They're building more housing. They've got more retail. Across the street, you've got Valley Fair. I just don't see an anchor tenant coming to this place. It's going to have to be reimagined, I think, before. I don't know. I unless Daniel Lurie can get Levi's to move in there, I don't know.
That's a solution.
There you go, Levi's headquarters.
Thank you for doing this.
All right, guys. Wish me luck. I'm picking up a foster dog.
Thank you for participating and listening, and thanks to Mark for sharing his time and expertise.
Yes, thanks, Mark.
Thanks for having me.
Everyone, have a great Sunday.
Have a great holiday weekend.